Viridiana Martinez is a co-founder of the North Carolina Dream Team and a member of the National Immigration Youth Alliance. She is deeply involved in activism seeking to protect the rights of undocumented students and correct injustices.
Hi, my name is Viridiana and I'm undocumented. I came to this country when I was 7 years old, and I grew up in North Carolina. And North Carolina is nothing like New Mexico. We don't have in-state tuition. We don't have driver's licenses. We are cray-cray. But I came out for the first time about 3-4 years ago, and not quite as public as I did at a march that was going on at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, where I literally somebody gave me the mic and said, "Viridiana, speak," and I said, "I'm undocumented, and this is what I look like," and then from there we started an organization called the North Carolina Dream Team, because there was Reform Immigration for America around and all these DC advocacy organizations who were trying to run the game, and we're like, you people don't represent us. You're not, what you're trying to get me to talk and talking points, I'm not gonna use that. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't identify and I don't wanna be tokenized. So I think that's where several of us were on the same page. We decided to come together and start the NC Dream Team. Look us up, ncdreamteam.org. And then since then, I've been arrested several times, but this year was kind of like a transition in my, I guess my activism. I don't really like the word activism, but this is a picture of several amazing women, 2 of whom have been deported. Inga was detained for 2.5 years. Applying for asylum. And then Feng, on that side, Feng Sao, 22 years old. She was in detention for over a year, seeking asylum. Learned English in detention because she didn't know any when she got into the detention center. And she was deported recently. That's Norma right there. She has 3 US citizen daughters. She's actually an aged out dreamer. She came when she was 12, and now she's 40 something. Victim of domestic violence, VAWA eligible, U visa eligible. She was detained for 100 days despite bleeding almost to death because of a condition she has in her ovaries. But ICE doesn't care. They don't give a shit. That's Katia. Katia came from Honduras at a young age as well. Not quite Dream Act eligible. I believe she was 17. But she has a son that was born here that she carried with her on the journey from Honduras. And I check myself as a Mexican, my privilege as a Mexican, because I didn't have to travel as much. But she has a young son who has asthma. And it took her son being hospitalized and the hospital staff calling the detention center in order for her to get released. That's Maria Leon. Maria Leon, she worked on a plane, on a presidential plane of Cesar Hugo Chavez, and she has an approved I-130. She was in detention for over 2 months, and I-130 is a form where your citizen family member can apply for you, can petition you for status. Elvia up there with the kids, she was in a lot of pain as well while detained. She had back pain, severe cramps during her period, her menstrual cycle, while in detention. ICE didn't give a shit. This family here, all these women, the Chavez family, their father, her husband, was detained, Jaime Chavez. He was pulled over driving without a license. His daughter was in the car with them, who was pregnant at the time. The police officer didn't give a shit. He was arrested and detained and held for, I believe, over 3 months before he was released. These were people and women and families that I met while I was in detention at Broward Transitional Center. It's ICE's model facility in Pompano Beach, Florida. They think that, you know, having quote unquote good food and a bed and basketball courts, that's enough to, you know, that people will be happy detained and they won't say anything. But the reality is, inside a detention center, you're nobody. You don't have a right to an attorney. You can communicate with your family only if they have money. What if your family doesn't have money? What if they're struggling? A lot of times people can't communicate to anyone. They don't know what's going on with their case. You know why? Because ICE doesn't tell you anything. Your deportation officer doesn't tell you anything. So those of us that are, you know, DREAM Act eligible and that are DACA eligible, this is the privilege we have. And even then, like there are DACA eligible youth detained that I know of personally, but we no longer have to face this. And yet there's other people who do. So we need to step up. I met these families when I turned myself into Customs and Border Patrol at Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on July 19th of this year. We tried that same day earlier at a Border Patrol office where my friend Marco Saavedra turned himself in, and he was successful in doing it. I wasn't. I wasn't wearing the proper attire either. I literally had to change into, you know, day labor type clothes, speaking only Spanish, and, you know, to turn myself in. And I lied. I lied about the age that I came in. I lied that I hadn't been, that I'd never been in school, that I just came to this country and directly went to work. That I was turning myself in because my husband had been deported and I had nothing left. And I was jobless and I had no reason to be here. So I did it to end up at BTC, at Broward Transitional Center. There was more background to that and I can explain more of that to you if you want. So I ended up and detained at Broward Transitional Center by like 4:30 a.m. that night. It was like 7 p.m. when I turned myself in on July 19th. And I was detained for 2 weeks. And the whole purpose of being detained is not, you know, oh wow, you're so brave and courageous. Wow, you did that. Like, no dude, I'm not brave and courageous. These people are brave and courageous. And like them, there's so many people still detained. Broward Transitional Center holds about 700 immigrant detainees, many of them dealing with medical conditions. And how we know this is that, so we ended up detained. Marco was detained a week before I was, turned himself in a week before I was, and by the time we get there, we communicate to our team outside. The way we see it is the real hard work is actually the people who are left outside, because the mission isn't completed just because you get in. Like, you need to start socializing and you need to make friends with the people detained, you know? I was inside with like 85 women, and my experience and Marco's experience was really different. The capacity of women on the women's side is 120. On the men's side, it's like 600. So, you know, the men are able to walk around across most of the detention center. On the women's side, you're basically confined to a hallway, and that's it. You don't leave that hallway unless you're going to eat, down to commissary, for recess, to the library, and you have 30 minutes. And you either go to commissary, recess, or the library. It's not, oh, I want to go here now, I want to go there now. No. You're constantly watched, constantly monitored. You have no rights. You are property of the United States and whatever the United States wants to do with you. From then until the time you are either released or whatever, nobody has to know. Nobody. We were, from the time that I went inside, we started, you know, getting calls on the outside from people who were inside that wanted to go public with their cases. People like Inga, who had been detained already over 2 years, and she knew everything that was going on in there. She knew everything from the different guards that had been, you know, fired at one point, and then new ones had been hired, from like the case of the Chinese detainee who tried to commit suicide, and the judge that handles the cases there at Judge Rexford at Broward Transitional Center. She knew everything. She knew everything about everyone because that's how long she'd been in there. And all of these women. I mean, initially, you know, to go in there and to, you know, when our mission is like, okay, get cases out of there and get stories and get people to open up to you. I mean, if I tell you when you're detained, hey, listen, I'm here to get your story out. Like, you want to tell me? Like, people look at you like you're crazy. Are you serious? Like, you're detained in here with me. How are you going to help me? So a lot of it has to do with literally talking to people and, like, you know, just you're one of them. I was one of them, and I talked to them, and I got along with them, and I, you know, created a relationship with them to the point where they could trust me enough to tell me, this is why I came here, this is what I'm dealing with, this is who my attorney is, this is my family's number on the outside, can you contact them and see how we can help? And then from there, you know, we send it to our outside team, like 4 or 5 people who are on the outside, talking to like a lot of families of other detainees as well. And we start with, you know, setting up an online petition, which you can find at dreamactivist.org. Setting online petitions for each detainee who wants to go public, reaching out to congressional offices. And in Florida, you know, we tried both Rubio and Nelson, and Marco Rubio was not responsive at all, so we have been in touch with Bill Nelson's office. And we reach out to media as well. So our kind of like our strategy to get people out of detention is, you know, not just what the attorneys have to do, because what the attorneys have to do is great, but when people are in there for 8 months and they want to get out, then something's up and some other intervention needs to happen. And so when the families reach out to us and tell me, hey, listen, I've been in here for 8 months, I'm like, this is an option, you can go public with your case, is that what you want to do? Yeah, I'm all for it. And so we start, you know, the intake process. A petition, get the family to reach out to legislative offices, get the family to reach out to press and media, get the petitions, you know, out through Twitter, Facebook, and whatever else we can find. And then that's how the case starts moving. And in some points, like the attorney here mentioned, you don't necessarily have to be an attorney to know about law. Doesn't mean I can give people legal advice, but you know, after a while, we know that if someone has a deportation order, then we got to move quick on their case, or else they could be deported like tomorrow. So, you know, we need to find somebody to file stay of removal or whatever. So there's a lot of work that goes into it that really, like, the person inside who has just turned themselves in, which was me, turn myself in to get these stories. Like, I'm just gathering stories and, like, you know, giving information to my team outside, but the team outside is really who then does the follow-up and, you know, has to call the family, find an attorney. Another problem that I'm sure exists in other parts of the country, not just in South Florida, but South Florida has some really shitty immigration attorneys. Really, really horrible immigration attorneys that charge people a lot of money to not do anything on their cases. Or if they do something, they don't explain anything that they're doing to the family. So when the families reach out to us for help because they say, listen, my loved one has been detained for 5 months now. He just got pulled over for driving without a license. And then I'm like, okay, so what is your attorney doing for you? I don't know. I mean, so when did you hire him? Like 3 months ago. So how much did he charge you? $3,000. I'm like, so what is he doing? Like, what do you mean you don't know what he's doing? So there's a real big disconnect, a real big problem with attorneys in South Florida. And like I said, I know it's not just in South Florida. So yeah, so I was detained for 2 weeks. Met these women. Marco was on the men's side, and I wish Marco was here. But what ended up eventually happening is that the same thing that Jonathan and Isaac talked about, for us, it was made public that we were inside. We started giving interviews, Democracy Now!, whoever else, like, you know, that heard about us being in Dreamers Infiltrate, you know, Broward Transitional Center. And then, you know, nothing was happening. We're communicating to the outside, you know, hey, what's going on? Like, are the guards acting crazy? Are the guards acting differently? Like, is ICE saying anything? You know, what's happening? Because nobody knows anything inside. Like, you don't know anything. And it's, when you ask, hey, listen, can you, it's not like you can ask, you know, ex-guard, hey, can you tell me what's up with my case? They're gonna look at you like you're crazy. Oh, you just need to wait to talk to your deportation officer, which is the representative of ICE, basically. So nobody knows anything. It was until, so Marco did an interview with Univision, and I did an interview with Telemundo. It was aired that evening, and so BTC has flat screen TVs in every room. Inside detention, yeah, that's where your taxpayer dollars are going. And so this, like, the interviews aired, and so Marco and I, you know, were talking, and it was literally like, you know, Dreamers Infiltrate, detention center. The next morning, ICE, you know, called us down. They said to us, oh, you know, we reviewed your case and we think that you're eligible for deferred action. So can you just give me, you know, the name and address of the person who's gonna come and pick you up? And I'm like, what do you mean you reviewed my case? Like, I lied to you. I lied to you when I turned myself in. What are you talking about? And how come you're not doing the same interview to those women that are in there? That should be released, like under Obama's statement, like these people are low priority and they shouldn't be detained, so why are we not having the same interview with a line of people and you're, you know, asking them the same thing? Why is it just us two? They brought up nothing about the media, they brought up nothing about anything except we reviewed your case and think that you are eligible for deferred action. And then at that point, you know, she got mad at me. She started talking to Marco. We finally ended up with, okay, we'll come back down. You know, we have to go make a phone call and we'll come back down with the phone number and address of somebody to come and pick us up. So we went, you know, I went back to the women's area. Marco went back to the men's area. We called Mohammed, who was, you know, somebody on the outside. And we're like, hey, they're trying to kick us out now. And of course, we were like, okay, so what if we, you know, what if we make a list of people that we want out with us? And then that way we tell them, okay, if you want to kick us out, then, you know, you have to kick out these other people too. And so, you know, Mohammed goes and, like, you know, writes this email that he sends out saying, you know, Dreamers refuse to be kicked out. building up the tension and stuff. And so we go back downstairs, see the ICE officers again, and she says, and I hand her a piece of paper. She says, "Oh, great, you have the address." And she turns and she opens it and she says, "What is this?" And I was like, "Well, if you're gonna want us out, then you need to get them out as well, because they deserve to be out, based on like the Morton memo." And she got mad. She rolled up the paper and she said, "Fine." And then she went and talked to Marco and she said, "Do you want to do the same thing?" You know, they try to be so intimidating and like fail. They swear we were born yesterday. But Marco says, "Yeah, you know." And then we leave, they tell us to leave. And like, I want to say like an hour later, I was escorted out of my room by 2 ICE officers and the guards, who are not the same people. The guards in the detention center are employees of the GEO group, because this is a privately owned detention center. So that's also the incentive of like, you know, there's profit involved in keeping people there, and the fact that this place stays afloat as long as there are detainees. So we got escorted out. I didn't see Marco. I didn't know what was going on with Marco. But I was literally escorted out. They weren't talking to me. They weren't saying anything. I was like, "Hello, where are you taking me? What's going on?" I mean, it was just crazy. And they finally, literally, like, took me out of the side door and took me to the front. Nobody was saying anything. I had guards around me like I was some big time like criminal or something. I'm like, "What's wrong with you people? Like, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Why aren't you talking to me?" I'm just like, "I'm a woman and like illegal, and like what's wrong with you? What are you so afraid of?" Ignored us completely. And what happened was I didn't see Marco until I saw like a bunch of guys in their like orange jumpsuits. They went up like to the intake room and they said, "We want to see Marco." And I was like, "Oh no, what's going on? Like, where's Marco? What are they doing to Marco?" And they said, "We want to see Marco." And the guards are like, "He's not here, he's not here. You need to go back to the courtyard, go back to the courtyard." They're like, "Oh, we want to see Marco." And then they start, "Marco, Marco." And we're talking like 500, 600 immigrant detainees, like, "Marco, all males." It was crazy. I was just like, what am I, in a movie or something? Like, what are they doing to Marco? What's going on? I didn't see Marco. And then they threw them to they forced them into the courtyard. They started chanting, "Free at last, free at last." And I'm like, what is happening? Like, these are, like, the majority of these men are like Latino, like, and they're chanting "free at last" right now. Like, what are they doing to Marco? Where's Marco? And all I remember was seeing disturbance control team arrive, and you know, their radios, and they're going nuts, and they're like, yeah, we're here, like, you know, like they just couldn't handle themselves. And then 2 hours later, they said, "Your ride is here," and they again escort me to the gate. They literally like kicked us out. Like, they literally were like, "Go to the other side of the gate now." Like, what are you doing on this side? Go to the other side. You just need to leave. We don't want any problems. You apply for deferred action. You need to go to the other side. And we're like, you know, "What are you afraid of? And where's my phone?" Like, this whole time, I'm like, "Where's my phone?" Because I got detained with my phone on me. So you know, it was just an experience that I realized, wow, we have so much advantage as undocumented youth, that the more we victimize ourselves, the less we open ourselves to how many advantages we have and how we can use those advantages to like further our cause and further, like, deferred action is nothing. Like, deferred action has been around since like first granted to John Lennon. You know, all they did is create an application process. That's all they did. And I get it, like, coming from the South, trust me, like, I know people need to work, and I know people need to drive, and like, my sister's applying for deferred action. Nothing against it, but now that we have it, you know, we can use it to our advantage. And we can use it to demand more than freaking application to see if we can get a work permit. I beg your pardon. Like, we deserve more. Our families deserve more. And so, you know, that was the whole idea in getting detained. Once we got kicked out, and I guess like how this is like a network and a collective is that when you're detained, it becomes a network. Like the number that we give out for people to call, from like detainees talking to themselves, hey, listen, you should go talk to her because she can help you. Or like, you know, like all these things, like it's a network inside. It's what it creates. And even now that we're out, Marco and I have been out for like months now, since August, they're still calling us. They're still calling us. Detainees are still calling us. We have to make sure our phones have money for, you know, to be able to receive calls from Broward Transitional Center. As a matter of fact, recently, male detainees, 428 male detainees, drafted and signed a letter to like Director of ICE himself, John Morton, saying, hey, listen, you know, these are the kind of people that are detained, and, you know, based on the Morton memo, like 90% of the people detained here would not be detained here if this thing was actually enforced. And it's got all of their names and all of their alien numbers. It's like amazing. And they sent us a letter. In the letter, they mentioned the National Immigrant Youth Alliance. And I mean, that network, right, is still alive even after we're out. So that's the seed that we plant, and that's the idea that, you know, that we have this thing called deferred action now that protects us. And I mean, we've been protected even before that. That's how we were able to get deferred action. And that, you know, we need to use that and create networks and use the privilege that we have, our political capital, to push everyone else in our community that's like dragging behind. And not because they want to, because trust me, nobody wants to, you know, be dragging behind. It's just that, you know, sometimes you can't do anything else. So that's my presentation, and I urge you to sign the petition that we have. There's a lot of petitions available for each individual case, but for the Broward Transitional Center specific petition that we have up, it's bit.ly/BTC release, like BTC, Broward Transitional Center release. Or you could probably like Google BTC Dream Activist, and you'll probably find it online. But this is basically the petition asking for a review, a congressional review of this detention center. And what does that mean? That means that we're asking Congress and ICE, DC ICE, and all these like hot shots to like go to BTC and do like a review case by case of the people that are detained, so that the people, you know, that should be released are released. So I urge you all to do that.